To the sovereign circle of chosen vessels, what I am about to decode for your spirit today carries a heavy weight that will halt your momentum entirely. This is not a conventional narrative detailing your submission to a predictable divine blueprint. This is not a superficial sermon instructing you to choose between standard righteousness and basic error. This is a revelation regarding a trajectory far more extraordinary, complex, and unyielding than anything you have ever been taught. The architect of reality drafted two distinct pre-recorded vectors for your existence, a good trajectory and a superior trajectory. Both blueprints were structurally engineered by his hand. Both vectors terminated at an authentic, high-value destination. Both represented entirely valid, productive options for your life on this earth. You stood at that monumental junction, analyzing both horizons. You surveyed the safety parameters of the left and the visible impact parameters of the right. And then, you executed an action that defied every calculated probability in the spiritual realm. You selected neither. You weaponized your free will to force a completely unmapped direction, a third path. A path that existed on no charting sequence, made absolute zero logical sense to the matrix, and entirely confounded the expectations of the crowd surrounding you. If the sovereignty of heaven is capable of experiencing absolute astonishment, it currently stands speechless at your positioning. Today, I am going to reveal the exact mechanics of this third path, dissect the raw psychological fire that compelled you to select it, and detail precisely how the Creator evaluates your positioning right now. Let us first dissect the architectural layout of the two original paths you rejected. The first vector was the path of absolute insulation. It was the predictable, practical, and highly optimized script that made complete sense to the ordinary minds around you. It was the lane where you accepted the stable, corporate position, constructed the comfortable, middle-tier lifestyle, and anchored your body in a familiar, low-friction environment. It demanded that you maintain superficial dynamics that were safe, predictable, and socially approved, even if they left your soul completely starving for depth. This was not an evil path, it was a legitimate blueprint prepared with divine love for the specific version of you that would choose to settle. For a brief moment in your history, you heavily contemplated it. The static comfort was undeniably seductive. The absolute predictability of it promised a profound relief after the chaotic warfare your soul had endured. Yet, a silent rebellion within your spirit refused to sign the contract. A heavy internal gravity pulled you away from the insulated lane. Not because comfort is inherently corrupt, but because your spiritual anatomy was engineered for a level of dominion that safety could never fully contain. The second vector available to you was the bold path, the high-visibility lane designed specifically for the chosen vessel who was willing to deploy raw faith and take massive, public risks. This was the traditional purpose track, the ministry lane, the highly recognizable, step out in faith archetype. It was the route where you built the organization, launched the public movement, proclaimed the doctrine, and answered the divine summons in the most direct, visible, and structured manner possible. This trajectory was genuinely magnificent, overflowing with measurable impact, public fruit, and the specific psychological satisfaction of executing a calling within an established framework. You analyzed this route, felt its immense spiritual gravity, and acknowledged how seamlessly it aligned with everything you knew you were capable of executing. Yet, an unexplainable check in your spirit stopped your hand from signing this contract as well. It was not a paralysis born of fear, it was not a deficiency of faith. It was an incredibly precise, internal knowing that even this bold path, as noble and spiritual as it appeared to onlookers, did not mirror the exact, raw contour of the vision locked inside your heart. And so, you executed the ultimate defiance, you stepped into the blank space of the third path. This is the classified vector that the Creator intentionally left off the master map. Because he required a sovereign validation of whether you possessed the rare internal sight to discover it yourself. It is a trajectory synthesized exclusively from the distinct combination of your deepest trauma, your lethal gifts, your chaotic experiences, and your absolute refusal to fit into any pre-existing category engineered by man. The third path manifests as executing your empire in a manner that has zero historical precedent, penetrating demographic sectors that neither of the first two paths could ever reach, and speaking a dialect that seamlessly fuses the hyper-spiritual with the hyper-practical so that both worlds feel entirely decoded. You are building an empire that possesses no corporate template, serving broken demographics that existing institutions are completely unequipped to manage, and driving through wilderness zones where the well-worn paths never tread. You are doing it all in the unrepeatable, highly specific manner that your entire life fire equipped you for. That is the third path, and the moment your boots hit that unmarked terrain, the eyes of the entire spiritual realm locked onto your coordinates. I must now reveal exactly why your discovery of the third path left the courts of heaven in absolute awe. It was not because the Creator was unaware of its mathematical existence. He designed the variable equations. He always comprehends the hidden landscape. What left the spiritual realm speechless was the sheer statistical anomaly that you actually found it. The third path does not announce its existence to the matrix. It does not operate with loud promotional sequences or obvious markers. It possesses none of the clear societal signaling that validated the first two routes. To successfully locate the third path requires a hyper-evolved category of individual. It demands someone who decodes their own internal anatomy so deeply that they can instantly recognize a counterfeit alignment, even when it is wrapped in gold and looking exceptionally holy. It requires a warrior who trusts their internal spirit enough to walk completely away from options that are entirely valid, yet fundamentally wrong for their ultimate rank. It demands an individual whose relationship with the Creator is so highly calibrated that they can feel the sharp contrast between a convenient divine blessing and a raw, unadulterated divine assignment. It requires a rare willingness to march straight into the unknown without an external map, because the standard map you were handed at birth never documented where your destiny actually resides. That specific tier of human asset is dangerously rare, and that asset is you. That lethal combination of raw self-knowledge, acute spiritual sensitivity, and the terrifying courage to execute operations without a human blueprint is exactly what heaven defines as extraordinary. Let us strip away the romantic illusions and explicitly audit the brutal cost of walking the third path, because a sovereign warrior must never enter a theater of war blind. This trajectory is magnificent, but it exacts an incredibly heavy tax on your psychological and emotional reserve. The primary toll of this unmapped vector is the reality of absolute isolation. Because this path is uniquely, specifically, and unrepeatably customized to your exact spiritual DNA, no other human being can fully walk it alongside you. This implies that even the individuals who harbor the deepest love for you, even those who genuinely desire to sponsor your advancement, are structurally incapable of seeing the horizon you are chasing. They can stand on the sidelines, they can applaud your execution, and they can try to believe in your vision, but they cannot comprehend the path, because it was never engineered for their feet. Walking a trajectory that everyone else is blind to is one of the most isolating psychological crucibles a chosen soul can endure. It forces you to realize that human affection can never serve as a substitute for true, sovereign comprehension. The second tax of this path is the constant, violent cross-examination from the public and from your own internal thoughts. The third path lacks the built-in validation mechanisms that fuel the first two lanes. The insulated path rewards you with instant societal approval and domestic security. The bold movement path rewards you with instant religious validation and community praise. The third path offers you absolutely nothing but a cold, quiet, internal knowing that you are correct. And that internal knowing, as lethal as it is, can heavily waver when your physical body is exhausted, when the algorithmic results are delayed, and when you look at individuals on the standard tracks who appear significantly more settled, highly affirmed, and comfortably certain. You will face dark nights where your mind asks if this third path was just a highly creative illusion born out of a fear of fitting in. It was not. But the trial of questioning will assault you relentlessly, and the only force capable of sustaining your position is the quiet, unshakable absolute certainty that you have been deployed precisely where you belong. The third heavy toll you must pay on this unmapped vector is that the manifestation of your fruit takes significantly longer to materialize. The first two standard paths operate on pre-established industrial pipelines of cause and effect. You execute the traditional protocol, you trigger the expected system, and you view the predictable outcome. But on the third path, you are constructing an enterprise that has never existed in the historical records of your bloodline. This means the systemic infrastructure required to generate wealth, influence, and impact does not exist yet on your terrain. You are forced to manufacture the machinery while you are actively sprinting forward. Consequently, your growth appears slow, your metrics remain highly unpredictable, and your progress will remain completely invisible for long, agonizing stretches while your roots are expanding deep underground in ways human eyes cannot track. The sheer patience required to keep executing at a world-class level when there is zero visible validation is one of the most demanding filters of the third path. Now, hear this message from the Creator: the existence of this third path was never an accident. This was not you going rogue or violating the master script. Your life did not deviate from the sovereign will. This unmapped trajectory, in all its chaotic unexpectedness, was fully accounted for within the divine intellect. It was not Plan A, it was not Plan B, it was an entirely higher tier of operations that could only manifest through the exact version of the warrior you became through the fire of your history. If your journey had been soft, the eyes required to see this third path would have never developed. If you had not survived the specific warfare you went through, you would lack the rare psychological perspective required to find the portal. If you had not forged these lethal gifts through the furnace of your specific trauma, this path would have remained completely invisible to your sight. Your suffering was the exact diagnostic tool used to engineer eyes that see what the crowd misses. Your resilience built the legs capable of marching where the weak collapse. Your unconventional story manufactured the raw wisdom required to navigate a terrain that possesses absolutely no historical precedent. The Creator did not orchestrate your pain, but He strategically recycled every drop of that fire to manufacture the precise asset who could conquer the third path. Let us address the exact operational phase you currently occupy on this unmapped terrain. To the chosen vessel standing at the absolute baseline of this trajectory, who has just violently cut ties with both standard options and is staring into the quiet, unmarked wilderness of a new enterprise, I command you to keep driving forward. The profound discomfort and disorientation vibrating in your nervous system right now is not a signal of misalignment, it is the natural, physical friction of forcing your way through a territory that has never experienced human footsteps. New ground will always feel hyper-uncertain, but uncertainty must never be confused with error. Trust the sovereign code that brought you to this edge, and execute your next move. To the veteran warrior currently trapped in the brutal middle of the third path, who has been executing for seasons, built an authentic foundation, and witnessed initial traction, but is currently operating under extreme fatigue, hear me clearly. What you are constructing is real. The immense exhaustion of the middle phase does not indicate that the conquest will fail, it simply confirms that you are a human asset executing an extraordinary task. Rest your body, recalibrate your focus, and immediately return to the line of fire. The middle of this unmapped path is the exact coordinate where 90% of the population would have broken, and the absolute fact that you are still standing is proof of your elite engineering. And to the soul currently agonizing over whether this unmapped path was a catastrophic mistake, who is looking back at the comfort of the standard tracks with a sense of mourning, understand that your longing is not evidence of a wrong choice. It is merely the biological symptom of deep fatigue, and exhausted minds always romanticize the lanes they rejected. The first path would have given you comfort, but comfort was never the metric you were engineered to fulfill. The second path would have offered institutional meaning, but you have demanded meaning on your own sovereign terms in ways that rigid structures could never accommodate. You made 0 errors. You executed the most courageous decision available on the board. Heaven tracked your move, the matrix felt the shift, and the spiritual realm is honoring your positioning. To walk this trajectory successfully, you must implement 3 practical protocols. First, document the journey with absolute precision. This unmapped vector produces codes, insights, and structural breakthroughs that are highly valuable. Write down every unexpected door that unlocked, and every dead end that revealed itself as a hidden portal. Do this because your private operational archive will eventually become the master map for the next generation of your bloodline. Your execution is their blueprint. Second, seek out other third-path walkers. They are rare, highly insulated, and difficult to find, but they exist. The connection between 2 minds walking completely unique, unmapped destinies is the ultimate fuel for a chosen soul. They cannot tell you where your specific path terminates, but they intimately comprehend the psychological reality of marching without a human map. Find them, protect them, and invest in those alliances. Third, liquidate comparison from your mind permanently. The third path cannot be evaluated against the metrics of the standard lanes. They are not even running in the same dimension. Evaluating your unmapped execution using the basic milestones of the crowd is an absolute error in logic. Establish your own sovereign metrics, define your own targets of dominance, and permanently refuse to measure your worth against a template engineered for a lesser destiny. Heaven watched you execute the split-second decision to step onto the third path, and it is no longer speechless. It is actively cheering your march. Keep running. Your kingdom is almost in view. Move down to the comments. Right now and declare, I am the architect of the third path. Claim your position, lock your focus, and let us build.